2023 Town of Monroe Planning Board Workshop Meeting. I'd like to point out the fire exits. There are two in back of the audience. There's another which is the main entrance when we come in, and then another that goes out to the patio in this direction. Noreen, would you please do the roll call?
Bonnie Franson.
Here.
Jeff Manson.
Here.
Pat Shea's out. Nick Napoli.
Here.
Dylan Penn.
Here.
Thank you.
With that, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. All right, first thing on the agenda is Henry Farms. Good evening.
Good evening, Vince Peterzak.
So, do you want to give us any kind of update or where things stand from your perspective?
I guess we're waiting on a letter from the planning board in response to the attorney's submission.
I will turn it over to Ashley. And is there anything you want me to bring up?
So the attorney did submit on May 1st. I don't know if you want to pull that. May 1st submission. It was a copy of our March letter to the applicant and with their comments, suggested revisions.
Take a look at, I guess, the red line.
Yeah, that would probably be the easiest. First comment is on the bottom of the, I'm sorry, the middle of the second page. Adjusting the roadway details and profiles to confirm compliance with the town code requirements they've added in, and the waiver granted as part of the approval in the resolution. So I just wanted some clarity on that. Are you referring to, there was a waiver, I believe, from the 2% grade within 100 feet of an intersection that was granted by the highway superintendent?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our intent is to stick with the designed road as previously approved.
That waiver, I don't think was actually part of your resolution. It was something that was granted by the highway superintendent that was then incorporated into the planning board's approval. The next item was to requested they update the plans to include drainage, water system improvements, sewer collection, et cetera, to conform, they're adding in to conform to the zoning regulations in effect at the time of the original resolution approving the 115 units and commercial lot.
So do you want to, actually a couple of things. I want to go back to that prior bullet. I think it'd be useful to actually then clarify, since this is being redlined, and the waiver granted by the town board or whoever it is, highway superintendent, and as recorded in the approval, because it wasn't our waiver. And then regarding conforming to the regulations in effect at the time of the original resolution, if you could speak to, I think we confirmed with Mr. Furyk what the intent was in terms of the stipulation.
Yeah, so we discussed that a little bit last month. It wasn't really clear whether, to what extent the old zoning applied versus anything that may have changed. So we did confirm that the intent is to basically pull out the old 2015 zoning for purposes of evaluating this subdivision. So the main one here, which is a little further down, so the tree plan won't apply, the tree preservation law wouldn't apply to this application.
I think in terms of then the next bullet, it says the amended application, they wanted to include is exempt from the tree preservation law because we were asserting that it was. So with the clarification that this is based on the 2015 zoning law in effect, then it wouldn't be subject to the tree preservation law. I would just delete that bullet.
I was going to,
Okay. Because it was something we were asking for, and I think Jay clarified this, but now I think we would just delete it since it's not relevant as far as what we're requesting.
one was, the planning board's comment was to consider revised lot locations that may reduce impacts to wetlands and/or grading of steep slopes. And their response is that pursuant to the terms of the stipulation, the layout of the 70-lot amended plan was annexed to and incorporated therein, has been submitted for review and approval by the planning board, was agreed upon by the parties, and serves as the basis for the town's execution of the stipulation, recognizes the right to construct 70 single-family detached market-rate, non-deed restricted residential units and one commercial lot. Both sides relied upon the stipulation for the reciprocal right to require the applicant to proceed with the approved layout. The stipulation further confirmed that the planning board shall review the proposed amended plan under the zoning regulations in effect at the time the resolution was adopted. Further, the stipulation states that the lot areas are hereby deemed conforming as to the bulk, to the extent a variance would otherwise be required. Finally, the lot location shown on the amended Henry Farm subdivision plan conform to all applicable restrictions as to wetlands and/or steep slopes. Based on the foregoing, the applicant will proceed with the layout as currently submitted. So this is their response to your comment. I think, Sean, did you have something regarding the?
I do. So for the second to last sentence, they affirm that they do conform with all applicable restrictions as to wetlands and/or steep slopes. A grading plan was submitted, but that's not been vetted yet, nor has any updated correspondence with Army Corps or DEC been received. So I don't know how the applicant can assert that statement at this point, so.
If it was a judge that stated that, and
Oh.
it was in findings from the court, but that could be verified.
Not that portion where they're saying that the lots comply with the wetlands and steep slopes requirement. I think that's something that, and I'll go back and check the stipulation for sure, but that is something that I don't recall being decided yet.
I think that probably requires a modification to that bullet to reflect the stipulation, but some of what's being represented isn't accurate from the perspective of we don't have enough information to then conclude that everything's in conformance with all applicable restrictions as to wetlands and/or steep slopes.
I think that you would perhaps keep your first, did ask that they consider it, understanding that's ultimately up to them whether they're choosing not to consider modifying anything, that's up to them. But that portion, I think all about the stipulation isn't really necessary for you to have in there as your comment, but the ending there where it says that the lot locations conform to those restrictions, perhaps you would say it should be confirmed that they.
George, there's a lot of static up here. Thank you. Oh, nope.
I would suggest saying there instead that the applicant should demonstrate that the lots conform to all applicable restrictions.
Okay. Everybody understand? So, I mean, it comes down to the stipulation of settlement. There's a question in everyone's mind whether or not we can ask for modifications. And frankly, the applicant at some point may or may not ask for modifications depending on whether or not, the wetlands are delineated differently, or Army Corps regulates something differently, or another agency regulates something differently. So, we'd like to leave that in there. And I guess we'll see what the reaction is from the applicant's attorney.
Is under an amended SWIP would be required, they've added, or confirmation that the existing SWIP does not need amending. So I think that.
think it's Vince's. Let's see what happens.
So just to comment on that, I think what the applicant's hoping for is that if an MS4 acceptance was signed at the time of the previous approval, that would suffice and a new SWIP would not be required.
You have to turn it back on now to talk.
Hopefully it won't do anything.
Sorry about that. We actually have an active NOI, which I believe was submitted,
Right.
so we comply.
Understood, but also recognizing that a SWIP is a living document, so any changes to the grading would require an amendment potentially to the SWIP. But it would be reviewed under the old regulations, I should say the old general permit that was filed under.
Is that consistent with DEC policy?
It is, yep.
Okay, okay.
So would that be then their last bullet point in this section? Input on any revisions to the lot layout, they said see response above, subject to obtaining sidewalk waiver from town board, subject to previously waiver granted for layout and design. So I don't know, I believe the sidewalk waivers under the road specs that the town board can waive that. The second part of that, the previously granted waiver for layout and design, I wasn't sure what that was referring to, if it was because the only waiver I'm aware of was that highway superintendent's waiver for the road grade. I don't know if this is meant to refer to the stipulation.
I believe that he is referring back to the section where he was describing the stipulation.
Along that, a waiver as to layout and design.
I don't know how you might want to do that, or just say as per the stipulation, or. So what the applicant would like now, that they don't want to adhere to the existing approval, is getting a sidewalk waiver. Is that the case?
Yeah, the previous project had received the sidewalk waiver.
Oh, it had received a sidewalk waiver.
Yes.
Okay. So then if it already got a sidewalk waiver from the town board
I didn't have that in my,
in the record,
yeah, and since it says subject to obtaining, it sounds like it hadn't been.
yeah, it sounds like you have to get it, the way that it's written by Jay.
That's because we're assuming we would have to get it again, that the previous one wouldn't apply.
By the way, George, that definitely is the applicant's microphone.
Just push the neck into the base.
At the wireless.
Yeah.
Hey,
George, should we give him the
George,
wireless?
George, can I swap out my base if you guys want? I could share Jeff's if I'm going to say anything. Okay.
Just so you know, George, there's an extra base by Pat's chair where he's not here. Before the next applicant comes up, should we try swapping it out? Or let it lie?
Well, the thing is, they run in series, so if you pull that one out, it might not have a microphone.
Okay.
So let's just go with the wireless.
Okay, thank you.
I think here, I don't know what, as far as anything that would need to be referenced for the second piece of that, I think you could add input from the town board, add after that, subject to obtaining a sidewalk waiver. But the rest of that, I don't know that you gain anything from, because you already discussed it above, so.
So leave it as is then?
And at the end, subject to obtaining the sidewalk waiver from the town board under section A 6313A.
Yeah, presuming this was added because it was a thought that it wasn't. And if it turns out that it was, then we can address it.
Well, the only other waiver that I'm aware of would be the road design waiver.
added in at the end of that paragraph, discussing compliance with the town engineer's most recent comments. They've added, and subject to review of the application in accordance with this letter, such review to be made under zoning regulations in effect at the time of the adoption of the resolution. So at the time of the adoption of the 2015 resolution. I would add in there. Now, under the seeker analysis, in discussing the consistency analysis, you've said that it should include a comparison for the potential impact studied in the original EIS. They've added "and as listed in the adopted seeker finding statement." So I guess I don't know if there's a difference between, if there's some difference and that's why that's been added or suggested to be added in.
My only reaction to that is I don't know that the seeker finding statement is going to contain all the information that we're looking for. So while I know that also from a DEIS to an FEIS, the project may have changed, there may be differences, let's say cut and fill may have changed from X to Y, that would be then captured in the FEIS, in the final environmental impact statement. So I think that adding "and as listed," if it's just to include the seeker finding statement in addition to the EIS, I think that's okay.
Maybe including
The adopted seeker finding statement.
those listed. Then moving on to the different categories for the consistency statement. The first is geology, soils, topography. So the formatting here was a little confusing. I don't know, they've put in total area of disturbance. I'm just not sure if that's intended to be moved up under the geology, soils, and topography section.
Makes sense.
That's what I assumed. So it would be a letter E would be the total area of disturbance.
Yeah. Why it isn't, then the next line starts with number 2. The next change is water resources, update wetlands mitigation plan, which makes sense.
The next one was that with respect to the updated habitat and species analysis, they've said including potential habitat for bog turtles and any threatened or endangered species identified during the DEC Army Corps consultation process. I would suggest changing that to including but not limited to, in the
Yes.
event that something's not.
And understand that it's a habitat
two,
species
1, 2.
analysis, not just for threatened and endangered species. Because you don't know what's there until you do the habitat analysis.
And under fiscal analysis, they've clarified to update the analysis as appropriate with current town assessor information. I don't know.
I think that's, so if they did a comparison in the fiscal analysis of the vacant property, let's say, to the new property, then the delta, the change, it's going to be different. It possibly is different anyway because the assessment value may have changed, although this town hasn't been through an assessment or a reval for a very long time. So I don't know that it has, but I mean, we had updated as appropriate. But it's not just necessarily the assessment information, the number of units changed, the assumed, let's say, market value of the dwellings may have changed. So I just don't, again, want this to be limiting as far as that it's just the town assessor information.
Update analysis as appropriate, including but not limited to with current town assessor information. That was it.
Is everyone all right with this, with these changes? Anything you want to bring up, thoughts you may have on this? So then I guess you'll revise the letter and then send it back, and then ultimately the applicant will agree or not agree to this scope, which,
This will be your revised scope, then they'll be back before you, per the stipulation, they will be back June 8th, unless, they might say, this is fine and make their decision, but this isn't going to be your final scope yet. That would come after the June meeting.
okay. And at that point, hopefully we can schedule getting out into the field or doing whatever once this agreement is in place. Is that the case, your understanding?
Ready to go as soon as I'm authorized.
Okay. So maybe find out from Jay, because if we do want to do a site walk, it is a big site. I don't know how easy it is to get back in there, though. But I think, I know I would like to get there. Some board members may want to. And if that's the case, then, sooner than better if we can start, unless Jay, for any reasons, feels that the agreement has to be in place. So maybe Ashley can reach out to Jay about that.
Site visit?
Yeah. If that's okay, in advance of having an agreement in place. Right. Anything
see
else,
you.
Vince? Okay. Have a good one. Thank you.
Want a motion to authorize me to send that revised
Sure.
letter?
So I will make the motion that the planning board authorize our planning board attorney to transmit a revised letter to the applicant's attorney. May I have a second?
Second.
Noreen?
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson.
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
And with that, the motion carries, and Ashley will take care of that, in addition to just reaching out to Jay about site visits. Next item on the agenda is DG Management.
Got the other mic, so it should.
John Queenan from Lankin Tully, engineer for the applicant, also Mr. Lipa Deutsch, applicant's representative, before you with a project I think everyone is boldly familiar with again. For you last month, we went through the draft final resolution. Since that time, we've been going back and forth with Ashley and Sean about some changes to it. I think it is according to my perspective, in a position where I think we're with it. Issues with it. Part of the submission, additional sheet of the subdivision set that included now all the drainage in association with Scunnamunk Road and the DOT. Included in the plan set.
Before going over the resolution, there is an amended neg deck that you could pull that up. I could send it to you if you don't have it saved.
What would the date be? The 9th or the 10th?
Dated the 9th, but I don't know if I sent it the 9th or the 10th.
I wonder if it went to my other. Okay. To this one or to the? We're waiting for me to bring something up. No, we're okay. All right. So this is the negative declaration with amendments. Dealing solely with drainage.
Actually, I realized that date, it should paragraph there, adopted January 2nd, 2022, not 2023.
So here or
No,
earlier?
that'll be May 11th, but if you go down
Here?
that paragraph there, yes. So it explains that the amendment is to negative declaration originally adopted on January 2nd, 2022. Due to changes in the proposed drainage connection, the planning board as lead agency has reviewed the changes and determined that no significant adverse environmental impacts will occur as set forth herein. And then that's the section that's been revised. That they're now going to be connecting drainage directly into the Scunny-Monk Road infrastructure rather than connecting into the infrastructure that was proposed as part of that 310 Scunny-Monk subdivision in the village.
Only suggest, so it says after discussions with the village and concerns from its engineer, maybe just after discussions with the village and its engineer with regard to the ability. Any other changes, or that was it?
That was
one
it.
paragraph? Okay. Anybody have questions or want to discuss the changes in the drainage to understand? Or we're pretty clear? Yes? All right, so
Adopt the amended negative.
would someone like to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the amended negative declaration for the DG Management Subdivision Project subsequent to the changes proposed.
Have a second?
Second.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess we'll go through now the revisions to the resolution that were made. We did get another copy of this, and this is just to further update it, correct?
Yes, you had
Yeah.
reviewed it last month, and I could go over if you want the things that have changed.
Yeah, if you would, since we went over it already. I'll just scroll to the red lines.
There were a few things added as far as additional correspondence received from the DEC and Orange County DPW, and conservation easement base report, also the off-site drainage plan that had been submitted that the applicant had given and discussed earlier, and then the plans had been updated to reflect the most current plan set with an additional plan showing the off-site drainage improvements. I've added on page 6 that on May 11th, you've issued an amended negative declaration.
The references to drainage improvements, it says for 306 Scunnamunk. Did it say earlier 310 in the neg deck?
Yes, and that was the name of the subdivision, but the plan for the, do you want to clarify?
Correct, the subdivision's drained, and proposed drainage on Scott Road is,
Is one of them inaccurate?
no, the.
It is
the
306
na-
and 310?
It was the neighbor that wanted to be included with the improvements on Scunamunk
Okay.
that really have nothing to do with 310.
Okay,
So-
all right,
The engineer renamed,
okay,
standalone plan.
okay. So these are just updated plans?
Just to clarify that
Yeah.
those plans do identify the pipe that will connect to the DG and 310 Scunnamunk drainage, yeah.
That reflects our revised amended neg deck.
The conditions, they're pretty much as you had reviewed at the last meeting, but I will point out a few things. Some things had been taken out because the plans have been updated to reflect them already, some map note changes, so those are no longer included. The first more substantive change here is specific condition number 5, dealing with the timing for the construction of the drainage improvements within Scunnamunk. So it's been amended to read, prior to the issuance of a building permit for the first dwelling, the applicant shall obtain all agency approvals required for the drainage collection improvements within Scunnamunk Street, including a highway work permit from the DOT and street opening permit from the Village of Monroe. The applicant shall complete the construction of such drainage improvements to the satisfaction of the planning board engineer prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy.
I think that's what we had discussed, right?
And I actually discussed that with Ben, the
Okay.
building inspector, and he agreed to that condition.
Does anybody have an issue with this change? Everybody okay with that? Because I think we had it tied to the signing of the plat. I think the applicant wanted it maybe a little more open-ended, and so we tied it to the first, so that was sort of a middle ground. Okay.
Next one is number 7. So prior to the signing of the plat, the applicant shall enter into an agreement with the town regarding the road that's going to be conveyed to the town that's located in the village. Such agreement shall be in a form acceptable to the town attorney. Documentation evidencing the conveyance shall be filed in the Orange County Clerk's office, and I would propose to change that. Currently, it says before the plat is signed to say, and to take that out and just say documentation evidencing the conveyance shall be filed in the Orange County Clerk's office, and proof of the filing given to the building department within 90 days. Other items were reviewed the last
Prior.
time. Number 9 is a little different too, that it requires, prior to the signing of the plat, the applicant to execute an irrevocable offer of dedication to the town for the proposed road that's in the subdivision. It'll have to be acceptable to the town attorney as to form and then filed in the county clerk's office at the same time as filing the plat.
I don't know if it matters, but because that one road is actually being conveyed to the town's going to own it already, right? Or is that the one we're talking about?
That was the prior one that we were talking about.
So this is the piece that's in the town of Monroe?
Yes.
So I was thinking maybe we just say for the proposed road depicted on the final plat, located within the town of Monroe? Or is that not necessary?
Clarify that it's, the proposed road depicted on the final plat located in the town of Monroe shall be improved to the current applicable street specifications.
For the piece that's in the village, is it going to be improved as per the subdivision plat that's filed with the village?
Should be improved to the town of Monroe. Will be a town road.
But what is it showing now, whatever the village?
I don't recall the specific construction requirements, however, the cost estimate was reviewed on the basis that it would be constructed to the town specifications.
Okay. So,
My guess is it's town road. Same width as the town road, so it'll probably be just a matter of what cross-section was on the village map as compared to what the town requires. It's probably very similar, but it can be built the same. I don't think it matters. It's bonded either way.
okay.
Hasn't been constructed yet.
Would we get that detail as part of this plan set, or is that something that could be worked up when the town acquires that property?
Agreed, I think that could be reviewed at the time, such time that the property is conveyed to the town.
Okay,
As in that agreement, that the road will be constructed to the town road specifications.
Correct. There's an agreement that was made with the town board. I'm sure we can either add the language, if it's not already in there, that that portion of the road will be constructed to town standards.
yeah, I think maybe somewhere put in something about that particular segment being, again, because to some extent we're relying on the village map to reflect the road, so it may or may not, so it's just better to be explicit.
We'll check the agreement that was already prepared,
Okay,
and then we can get that in there. Could also put a note on the map to the same effect, just so it's covered in both locations.
Condition number 7, or as a, even as a new condition, a standalone condition, that the
maybe part of 7, since that's talking about the agreement.
agreement shall be in a form acceptable to the town attorney and shall require the road to be improved.
Town road specifications. Road or street? Okay, and shall require the road to be improved to current town road specifications. To current applicable, I think is what you said.
Current applicable road specifications.
Had to put in. Okay. Talked about 10.
Items were discussed last time, just some little minor modifications to the landscape and conservation plan.
So for number 11, the do not block the intersection sign and pavement markings, is that something that was okayed by the village? Okay,
Provided acceptance of that.
okay. So they've signed off on that, they're okay? Like if you go out and mark it, they're gonna be okay with it, or do you have to let them know?
We have to let them know, but they've approved it, yes.
Okay. Okay. And is that shown on the plans?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Ashley?
So the other items were all, I believe, reviewed last month. There were some changes to the landscape and conservation plan and establishing the habitat standards. Part of your resolution also, you're approving the terms of the conservation easement that will be required. So those are basically what are set forth in these conditions. I sent you a copy of that conservation easement, the current draft of that's incorporated these. There are notes on the conservation plan and just spelling them out again in the easement as well.
Do we say somewhere in here that the conservation easement has to be signed or filed prior to, at the same time as filing of the map?
It's number 17.
Okay.
And 18.
Number 19, actually, that it's recorded simultaneously with the plat.
Seven, 17 talks about that it will be done. Does 19 talk about when? Okay, when it will be done. Perfect. Really it? Were there any other changes? No changes are required to that drainage section? I don't think any of the changes would change that. For general conditions. Sean, did you have any comments that you wanted to note before?
No additional change.
Okay. Does the applicant have any comments or anything at this point?
No.
Board members?
I guess this question is really for Ashley. In relation, I was reading the conservation easement agreement, and in relation to another application, one of the things that we talked about was layering protections on the conserved area. So there's going to be a conservation easement on that. Am I correct? There are also deed restrictions that are in effect here for DG as far as for the individual owners, and particularly the owner of that lot, that they won't be able to disturb the conserved area?
I don't think there's a separate covenant that's required by this resolution, but the conservation easement will be binding on the properties and come up in any title report for them. But whether you wanted to require, you do have a condition for restrictive covenant regarding the tree plan notes, if you want that restrictive covenant to also identify the conservation easement.
For the individual.
And the easement will be filed on the individual deeds regardless, because it's,
Will the deed
It's on
note
the
that there's an
lots.
easement on it, a conservation easement?
sure, it'll come up.
In
But
the
only
deed,
on-
in the deed itself, I think.
But only on the one lot. It wouldn't show up on the other 8 lots.
Correct, because they don't own the land.
Right. So I think the suggestion was a reference in the deeds, in each deed.
This is getting above me a little bit. I don't know if you can reference lots that don't own, like, they don't own the land.
It's a private conservation easement in terms of, it's not like the other lot
Oh,
owners.
right, it's not on the actual,
They can't use that area, right?
it's
it
not
be-
part of their,
Not part of their lot.
But the HOA is going to own and maintain it, right? So could it be in the bylaws of the HOA?
Should be, yes.
Explain the conservation easement area, ownership.
Ownership right now, I believe it is one lot, and it will be owned by either an HOA, I think it's been set up, or if the town were open to taking it, the town could take the parcel itself.
Is there an open offer dedication to the town?
I think it was, I think there is one. I think the town board decided not to take it, but
I thought that was referenced in the agreement that the offer was made.
yes, we did. It was-
Okay.
Yeah,
So the conservation area is a completely separate lot from any of the homes itself. It'll be solely controlled by the HOA. Yeah, I mean, I'd either like to see that we require that as a reference in the bylaws, or I guess I'm asking if a deed restriction on that particular lot would be more protective of the conservation area by having, does it add another layer of protection, or is that redundant?
Do we have, before we get to that, do you have any strong opinion of whether the town or should the lot be owned by an HOA or the town?
I don't have a strong opinion of that one way or the other.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with either of those.
I'd be comfortable with the town. The only reason I'm bringing this up is that I think if we have a preference, then we should write a letter to the town board expressing our,
Preference.
our preference before they go one way or the other on the conservation easement. So I just want to get people's senses.
I know the agreement referenced that the town will retain rights to monitor and inspect, including by its agents, and I think that was important. I mean, I could certainly get behind a preference for the town to.
Is there, I'm trying to remember, is the lot accessed from the road or is it behind the homes? Are you-
behind.
So you're not able to access it directly?
You can go to the end of the cul-de-sac and access a piece of it there, but
And
there's
you,
no direct, driveway or anything that leads to it.
does it go all the way down to Scunnamunk through that O and R, that you could come up that way?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the end of the cul-de-sac, and then it butts up to the end of the cul-de-sac. So you could go to the end, and then you could access the parcel from there.
The reason I'm asking is we're talking about maintenance, whether it's the town or the HOA that owns it, someone is supposed to be maintaining all these various boxes, et cetera. So you need to be able to get into it.
That was one of the reasons why I don't think the town board wanted it. So they said,
It'd like the HOA to.
correct.
be
The HOA
responsible
would
for those
assume all the
maintenance.
responsibilities and the maintenance and the money. And
Right, but
we
the HOA has to be able to get access to it.
Correct, and they do. They have access from the cul-de-sac.
Right, but if the town can get access from there, if the HOA can get access, the town can as
Sure.
well.
Yeah, no, they drive up the cul-de-sac, town road, and
Right.
then you can access it. And then the town board created a park district for this so that it's a taxing district. So there was a schedule made with costs and values of what needed to be done, and that district was created. It's very similar to a drainage district,
Okay,
which was also created for this.
okay.
It's not really accessible from Orico Terrace.
No.
The property line doesn't really run close enough. Is that because of the,
That slope,
yeah.
yeah.
The rock.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the only other location you could probably get to it from would be to take O&R's
That's what I'm thinking.
trail and go up the power lines.
Which you could do.
You could.
You can walk up that.
Yep. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You can. It's not easy, but you can.
Done it numerous.
I have, but.
But no, the
But
easiest
yeah,
way,
it's not the,
yeah, go to the end of the cul-de-sac and then you can access it
and
from
then,
there.
okay.
So,
I mean, I can
was
see
it
where
discussed
I can
with
see where
the
the town
town
would
whether they
want it.
wanted or they preferred this
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought you were alluding to when you were talking about, not about the agreement, but that you'd actually already talked to the town, or you
Did I,
haven't.
it was not me personally, it was Jay Monroe who did the talking, but the town board was on the, they didn't want it.
He went to the town board?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
because there's an agreement that's already been compiled and signed by the applicant, waiting for execution for this conservation easement.
Okay. So this can be a separate letter if we want to take it up. It doesn't have to hold up, acting on the resolution, but I just want to understand where things were on the easement.
We've always been under the guise when the town board said no, we've set it up to the HOA, we've entered into the conservation easement with the town board, and we've created a district for it.
Okay.
And the property has already put all the markers up for
Okay.
the boundary of it.
Okay.
No, it's just we haven't, I don't know if we've gotten to this point with a conservation easement, or at least we haven't in quite some time, and because we've been talking about layering protections on that, I just want to ensure that both for this project and any project, we're providing as much protection as legally possible for that area.
That's partly why I would like to see it town-owned. I've seen situations with HOA land where it was in Suffern. There were two developments, one, the Bon Air, if you know Bon Air area at all, in Suffern. That land was open space. There was land that was open space in that subdivision, and when the whole subdivision was created, the development, and it was recreational property, and it was HOA. And the developer, I guess, who continued to hold title to it, ended up developing it. So then that same developer attempted to do that at another subdivision, but that particular HOA said, no, that's HOA land. So, I know there are protections here because the town also maintains the conservation easement.
Town holds the,
Right,
they'll be able to enforce it and.
right, so that's a little different than the situation there. So I think ultimately, from protection perspective, I would say that if it was owned by the town, it would be more likely to be protected. But perhaps there's enough with the conservation easement that, the town could enforce anybody coming in.
Well, and we have in this situation, we have the particular unique condition of the O&R easement, which encapsulates most of the conservation easement land, and as long as those transmission lines are there, O&R is going to want to maintain that easement, and even if the transmission lines go away, O&R may want to maintain that easement, but certainly as long as those lines are running there,
That's why we set the.
there is that additional protection.
Yeah, I mean, we had several versions of this, and that's why, remember, we had, every lot was owning a piece of it, and then it was, well,
Yeah.
that's not a good idea, because then people, tend to go beyond their boundaries, and they'll do
Well-
things in the easement, so we made it its own lot, so that if you
Yeah.
buy the property, you know where your property boundaries are, and then the markers are all across the rear yards of all those lots, saying, number one, this is a property boundary, number two, this is a conservation easement area.
Right.
And
I'm just thinking of,
further, we entered into that agreement with the town that gives the town the right, but not the obligation, to go in and do whatever they have to do there. And the district is set up so that the town can back charge the HOA if they have to go in and do work.
can the HOA sell the land?
No, I believe they can't because of the conservation easement.
And I don't think that stops it from
No,
being
that
sold.
wouldn't stop it from being sold, but it would always be subject to the easement. So it'll run with the land, so whoever,
It's also in the HOA documents.
The reason I bring this up, it'll always be subject to conservation easement, but I don't know if you recall that property that came in recently. I had a question from an owner who ended up purchasing a property that was supposed to have been given to the town, that was going to be a well location, I believe it was. I don't know how they ended up acquiring it, and then said, what can I do on this lot? And we said, nothing, because it's supposed to be a well location. So, again, from my perspective, just another reason why ultimately I would recommend, if we were going to send a letter to the town board, that it just be owned by the town. But again, that doesn't stop us from acting on this. That can be just a separate, if people wanted, we could send a letter to the town about it. But because of what happened, and that's happened a couple of times in the town where things have been sold, so.
Would be sold, but it's then on, the buyer to do their due diligence. That subdivision map would have came up in the title search.
Right, no, understood. But it just creates a layer of complexity sometimes that would be more straightforward if the town just had it, so. Jeff, anything else you want to?
No, thank you.
Nick?
No, nothing.
Dylan? Would someone like to make a motion that we approve the final resolution for DG management as amended?
I would like to make the motion that we approve the amended resolution for the final approval for DG management.
May I have a second?
Second.
That was Nick.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. When you get the champagne bottle.
All right, go get it. We have a short
Congratulations.
meeting. Come back.
Thank you for the board's perseverance on this application. Have a good night.
Have a good night. All right, next item on the agenda is BJ site plan.
I'm going to recuse
Not
myself
have a
since
re-
we're,
We don't have a quorum.
We don't have a quorum.
I have two that Bob came in and said that he's sick.
And Lou was supposed to be here, but something came up last minute.
Realize when Jeff gets up, you lose your quorum tonight.
And Pat is in
In
Ireland.
Ireland.
So we don't have a quorum. And I apologize for that, but this is sort of a
It was
last
last
minute
minute.
thing.
He sent the text at 5:30 that he had a family emergency.
Yeah.
And then Bob did it while we were sitting here.
Don't have a meeting on Tuesday unless we want to hold it. Do you think we don't have an agenda, but we can have a meeting that's limited to this. So is that all right?
I'm flexible.
Yeah, I just want to check everybody's availability.
Jeff doesn't have to be
Doesn't
here.
matter.
Well, unless you want to openly discuss. I haven't sent it out yet because I'm still trying to get through.
So what we'll do is we will ask how many board members we have potentially for a quorum on Tuesday. And if we can get a quorum, we'll hold the meeting.
I'll let you know as soon as I can.
Dylan, did you think you were going to be here, or are you not sure? Yes? Okay. So there's at least 3 of us. We just need Lou. Is Pat back, or?
He didn't answer me. I sent an email. Was he back for next Tuesday? And he didn't answer.
Okay, so hopefully Lou or, and we'll let them know. Well, someone's got to be here.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if they can't, again. So we'll just have to see what happens. Ashley?
When corporate, you don't have a quorum, so once, it's not a meeting anymore once Jeff steps down, so.
You know what, if for any reason Tuesday doesn't work, we'll see if we could schedule something as far as a special meeting. So, I don't think it's worth discussing informationally at this point because we're not going to have everybody who's going to act on it. So it's better just to do that when we have the quorum. Sure. Did not. They did not get back. In fact, I was going to reach out again and actually call them to see what's going on. Because I frankly, I don't feel entirely comfortable. And I'll talk with Ashley about to what extent can we issue things and maybe not do work within the easement area until you get something, approval in writing. Maybe there's other things that you could start. Yeah, well, in fairness to everybody who's going to decide, it should be as, in that same meeting where there's a quorum. So that's what our planning board attorney's advising.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to, so we'll have to find out tomorrow. We'll ask
I'll reach
everybody.
out to Pat again and see if he is gonna be home.
Okay,
Dylan says he'll be here. These two gentlemen, well, Jeff doesn't count if it's just BJ's.
right.
And I will,
Jeff gets to stay home.
well, only
No,
if it's
no, I
just
have another
BJ's.
meeting that if I don't come to this meeting, I have to go to.
Bob's just said that he's under the weather,
Actually.
and then Lou had the family emergency. He didn't say what it was.
So we'll just send out an email saying we
Yep.
didn't have a quorum, and it's important that we have the one for Tuesday to have the meeting for BJ's. And we'll see who responds. And if it's a problem, then
I'll
we'll
send it out
poll
as
the
soon as I
board.
get into work in the morning.
Okay? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'll see if we can fit it in anywhere in the schedule. But I know between Sean and Ashley and myself, as far as night meetings, things get a little tight. But we'll see what we could do. Maybe we can do something even, late afternoon if we have to. Yeah? You gonna bring champagne too?
Moses.
That's a little early. Mimosas. All right? So I apologize, there's nothing we can do. I didn't even realize it, so. It's literally until we got here.
Jeff went to say he recused himself, I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. All right,
Well, he texted after the meeting started that he was under the weather.
so with regard to minutes, we did just get the minutes. And if we're gonna hold another meeting, then I would suggest we hold these over. And then I have a chance to look at the Word docs and make some edits for the
Right,
next
Jeff
meeting, okay?
sent a couple of quick changes. I didn't do them yet.
Okay, good, perfect.
I have some things you need to sign.
Okay, and then I have these to sign also.
Okay.
But that I can bring on Tuesday.
These are the site plan for Mountain View and some neg decks you need to sign.
Okay. All right, anything else, consultants, we need to bring up or talk about? Do we need to go an attorney-client for any reason? Okay. I don't think so. I think, anything board members want to bring up? No? All right. I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.